working? Well, excellent. Pardon me. Right, good morning again everyone. We're just going to carry on with our topic, which is looking at people who were called by Jesus. And the chap we're going to look at today is the man who I've entitled The Man Who Lived with the Dead. Sounds a bit almost like a Halloween type thing, but it is literally, he was a man who lived among the dead. But first of all, I'm just going to recap what was said last week. And this is a story of the woman at the well. And that was the story of the lady who was drawing water in the middle of the day, a time when no one else would do such a thing. And she was really an outcast, and Jesus went and spoke to her. And she was amazed at this, and it really started off this relationship between Jesus and this woman. And Jesus told her all about this living water, this eternity, these wonderful things that he could offer her that she couldn't get from the water that she was getting from the well. And these are lessons that Graham picked out last week. And the first one is, it doesn't matter what you've done, Jesus wants to speak to you. This lady had a checkered past at best, and yet Jesus was still happy to speak to her. Nobody is a stranger. Jesus knew all about this woman. And there are strangers. We don't know everyone we meet, except for Jesus. He never met a stranger because he knew everyone. And this was evidence here. So you might think, oh, Jesus doesn't know much about me. But Jesus knows everything about you. So you might be a stranger to him, but he's not a stranger to you. Jesus talked about this living water, this eternal water. And what Jesus offers lasts forever. The water from the well would have lasted her for one drink, and that would have been it. But what Jesus offers lasts forever. And the final point, just to remind you of again, was about this lady went and she told all her family and her friends about this meeting that she'd had with Jesus. And they all came to find out what she was on about. So what Jesus gives, such good news, is really worth telling people about. Now in many ways the story is similar today. It's about someone who has an encounter with Jesus, someone who perhaps you wouldn't necessarily think was in a fit state to have an encounter with Jesus. But it took place in an area called Decapolis. And this was this area around here. And it went up as far as Damascus. And Decapolis stands for 10 cities. Which literally means there were 10 cities. And these cities were almost like had an independent governance structure. They were kind of separate to the wider government. And they were basically based around here, but Damascus was included, and that was up here. So here we have Jesus crossed the Sea of Galilee, and he ended up about here. And this is a modern day picture of one of the cities in the Decapolis region. So our character today, we don't know his actual name. We just know him as Legion, because that's what he refers to himself as. And we know this, he was a man possessed by evil spirits. He lived among the tombs, he couldn't be restrained, and day and night he called out and cut himself. So you imagine this character living in society. Apparently when Jesus arrived on the shore, that whole area cut into the rock was lots and lots of caves or tombs. And this man lived among these tombs, so it was not a very nice place. And he called out and he would have hurt himself and that. So this is the character that Jesus meets. Now, the story is in Mark 5, so let's read this together. Mark 5 verses 1 to 20, and it says this: So they arrived on the other side of the lake, in the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus climbed out of the boat, a man possessed by an evil spirit came out from a cemetery to meet him. The man lived among the burial caves and could no longer be restrained, even with a chain. Whenever he was put into chains and shackles, as he often was, he snapped the chains from his wrists and smashed the shackles. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Day and night he wandered among the burial caves and in the hills, howling and cutting himself with sharp stones. When Jesus was still some distance away, the man saw him, ran to meet him, and bowed low before him. With a shriek he screamed, "Why are you interfering with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In the name of God, I beg you, don't torture me." For Jesus had already said to the spirit, "Come out of the man, you evil spirit." Then Jesus demanded, "What is your name?" And he replied, "My name is Legion, because there are many of us inside this man." Then the evil spirits begged him again and again not to send them to some distant place. There happened to be a large herd of pigs feeding on the hillside nearby. "Send us into those pigs," the spirits begged. "Let us enter them." So Jesus gave them permission. The evil spirits came out of the man and entered the pigs, and the entire herd of about 2,000 pigs plunged down the steep hillside into the lake and drowned in the water. The herdsmen fled to the nearby town and surrounding countryside, spreading the news as they ran. People rushed to see what had happened. A crowd soon gathered around Jesus, and they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons. He was sitting there fully clothed and perfectly sane, and they were all afraid. Then those who had seen what had happened told the others about the demon-possessed man and the pigs, and the crowd began pleading with Jesus, "Go away and leave them alone." As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him, but Jesus said, "No, go home to your family, tell them everything the Lord has done for you and how merciful he has been." So the man started off to visit the 10 towns of that region and began to proclaim the great things Jesus had done for him, and everyone was amazed at what he told them. So just to pick up on a few points now from this story, it was a really scary scene. Jesus arrived in the dead of night. He didn't arrive in the morning, it wasn't light, it was pitch black. We know that from the previous story. So he's arriving at this cemetery, coming off the water on his boat into this cemetery at the dead of night. And on top of that, the fear of demons, it was something that ran very deep in Jewish culture. It was normal not to go out at night for fear that you might be accosted by a demon. There was all sorts of folklore and beliefs mixed into their faith that kind of affected how they thought about demons. So this was even scarier for them than it might be for us thinking about it. So Jesus met this man at the time when it would have been most terrifying. He didn't wait for the day, he didn't wait for backups, he didn't wait for the villagers to come round and help subdue him. He met the man when he was at his most terrifying. And there's a picture there of something haunting and to try and capture that image. Legion was a troubled man. And here's a picture, a painting here of perhaps him in his quieter times. And he was an outcast, and he was convinced that he was possessed. And nobody wanted anything to do with him. Nobody wants to live among the graves. Nobody wants to live down by the sea there. But that was the only place he could find. And the locals tried to chain him, but it says that he kept broken out of the chains. So he did have an interaction with people, but it was pretty much people just trying to restrain him, trying to pin him down, and trying to keep him out of the way. And the phrase legion, as you may know, is a reference to a Roman division of 5,000 troops. So when he was talking about, I'm called legion because there are many spirits inside, that's a reference to, obviously, the Roman occupation. People would have understood what a legion meant. And whether it literally means 5,000 evil spirits or just a lot, I think it doesn't really matter, but that's just so you get an idea here of the pictures this man was using to explain the nature of this possession. Jesus recognized this man's problems. As soon as Jesus saw him, he called out the evil spirit. He said, "Come out of that man." And he addressed the man's problems directly. He didn't pussyfoot around, for want of a better word. He went straight at it. And we saw last week how Jesus knows people. Jesus knows, no one's a stranger. And Jesus knew this man. He would have known what the man was like before he was possessed, and he would know what the man was going through by being possessed. And he addresses the problem directly. And interestingly, he knew exactly what was needed to cure this man. Now I find it strange that the demons didn't come out straight away, because when we see in other stories of demon possession, they come out straight away, they obey. But in this situation, something more was needed. But ultimately, Jesus demonstrated his authority over the spirit world by calling out these demons. Ultimately, they had to obey. They were terrified of him, and they had to obey. Now, a herd of swine, a herd of pigs. And the evil spirits, I've often wondered why they wanted to go into the pigs. But the thought is that evil spirits don't have bodies, they don't have a physical place to be, and they were desperate not to be sent away by Jesus to somewhere else. And they probably thought, well, if we have a physical body, it means we can't be sent to hell or wherever it was that Jesus was going to send them to. So the suggestion is they saw these pigs and they thought, we will take a physical body in these pigs. So they asked if they could possess them, and Jesus said yes. And this is evidence to me of the man's possession or it was exactly what the man needed to see to convince him he was healed. And I'll just put that out there because I believe that the man was demon-possessed, but there are some Christians who wouldn't necessarily believe that, and they might just say the man had a mental illness. And I suppose my answer to that is either way, whether the spirits coming out and going into the pigs and the pigs running down and being drowned was a sign of the spirits leaving the man, or whether it was just a sign to the man that whatever was troubling him had been taken away by the Lord Jesus. It doesn't really matter. The fact is, whatever problem he had, Jesus fixed. And the swine, the pigs, and what happened to them was something to this man to show him that the spirits had left, or that whatever was troubling him was taken away by Jesus. So it's just a thought to put out there. I personally take it literally that he was demon-possessed. Some Christians don't, but either way, I think this was a powerful sign of Jesus using what was around to heal this man. Now, I saw this in the news earlier this year, but I thought I had to show it to you because of the parallels. And China fishes over 2,000 dead pigs from the Shanghai River. Workers in China are continuing to collect dead pigs from a river near Shanghai, with more than 2,000 carcasses reportedly recovered so far. Officials say they have to act quickly to remove the pigs, as the Huangpu River is a major source of drinking water for the city. I've got a short video clip of this, and there are some images of dead pigs in it, so if anyone's a little bit sensitive to that, then you may want to look away. But it really, just to give you an idea of the aftermath of this situation, where these 2,000 swine had run down the hill into the Sea of Galilee, and what the effect would have been on the locals. So just to give you perhaps an impression.
It's not what you would normally expect to fish out of the river, but close to Shanghai, officials are busy pulling dead pigs from the water. More than 1,000 have been retrieved from the river since the clean operation began on Friday.
We
pick up the dead pigs from morning to night. We cannot do it at night for safety concerns, so we usually begin at 6:30 until dark.
It's still not clear what caused this pig spill, but local reports suggest that the animals were dumped by farms lying upstream. This local man says that it's pretty common to see pigs in the river, but this year, he adds, the problem has been worse than normal.